let me start this whole thing by kind of explaining. I have a general thesis that I've really bought into. So the name of this is Legally Organized. It's for the slightly paranoid. I'm assuming everyone here is slightly paranoid. If you're not, it's not my job to make you slightly paranoid, but it's my job to at least show you that if you are, and then you understand a little bit of the legal concepts, then I think you're really going to set yourself up for success. So I always like to start with this story or this anecdote. Imagine if you have the most talented genius ever. They rank 100 out of 100, right? But let's say they're probably 5% organized. Like 19 out of the 20 times, they're failing. Like they're just not following up with emails, they're not calling, they're not showing up when they're supposed to, right? I think we can all sort of relate with that. Do we all know that genius that just doesn't follow through, right? Okay. Now take the second persona. The second persona is that they're half as genius, like 50 out of 100. So like, realize what that means. 50 out of 100 means it's random. Like 50 out of 50, they're either getting it or they're not. It's totally random. Let's say they're 20% organized, right? Multiply those numbers out. The genius is going to crank out 500 units of work, of creative output. The second person is going to generate 1,000. But they're half as genius. And they're still messing up 4 out of 5 times. Like 20% organization's not that high, right? That's why it's a thesis. It's just a personal belief. It doesn't matter how talented you are. It doesn't matter if you're like the first or the second or the 10th person to create this product, right? It just doesn't matter. What matters is your ability to organize it in a way and then execute it in a way and keep that going to then make your business and your livelihood. Like, that's all that matters. That's actually the key variable. How good of an idea is a multiple of how far your business can go. That's a real thing. Like, Facebook at the time was a genius idea, so that's why Zuck's is $1 billion plus, right? That makes sense. So depending on, it's like a growth factor, but it doesn't mean that you can't have a successful life and a successful business if you're just half as like talented as the brainiac. Just show up. Do your work. I have the same belief with legal. So I'll give a little bit of background. That way this kind of makes a lot more sense. Is otherwise I'm just a crazy guy with a microphone almost yelling at you guys. So my background is that I went for a business and psychology double major out of Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. Thank you. Whoever said ooh. And I took a year off. The music bug really bit me hard, and I managed a few artists, no-name artists, recorded a lot of music. And then I took a year off, and then I went to law school because like that was the plan. I'm going to go to law school. And I was pre-law at Carnegie Mellon. Like, I thought that's what I wanted to do. I had interned at 2 big law firms for 3 summers. And the very last internship, right before I'm going to law school, down here at UTK College of Law, I realized I didn't want to be a lawyer. Like, I didn't want to practice law at all. But then I realized I really want to create businesses. I really want to create value. And by the way, I'm really modest about this. I'm still writing that story for myself. But here's where all this came from. So I was like, look, I'm privileged enough to get into law school. I'm privileged enough to be able to go to it. So I'm going to go because that's a remarkable opportunity. I'm not going to pass that up. So I went down, and I didn't realize that UT College of Law, if you go to the 4th floor of the law school in the library, you'll actually see platinum and gold records because one of the most famous entertainment lawyers was the bottom 25% of his graduating class and then funded the entire library. And I had no idea what called me down to Knoxville, Tennessee. But when I saw that, it just all made sense. I was like, I've been thirsty to be in music. I've been thirsty to be on the business side. This is where my home is. I had always been coding since 2000. And so I, throughout law school, just made some extra money just by coding for folks, and I was still managing some music. Between my second and third year of law school, I ended up getting a really great opportunity, and I went over to Los Angeles, and I managed, if anyone's in music, they might have heard this name, the Mastering Lab. They had mastered like Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, and I got to hear that in the original room that it was cut. Like, amazing experiences. And I had an opportunity to stay out there and work with labels. I came back, finished up my law degree, met my future wife in my last year of law school. Totally worth it. And so when I graduated law school, only 5% of students were getting a job in the law field. Because this was 2010, 2 years after the financial crisis, and now all the back-end services were starting to feel the 2008 pressures. So you have a slew of lawyers that weren't getting hired. Meanwhile, I'm like, I've been coding. I like this. Like, I'm good at it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a business. I'm going to just do it. And my business model was, I'm going to write code for designers. They have to get fed. So if I keep them happy, then I'll get fed. It worked modestly for a number of years, and I realized in order to take it to the next step, I didn't want to do it. But I kept up with it for 4 years. Even won a competitive bid to redo the City of Knoxville website. So you go to knoxvilletn.gov, that's my work. And I've worked with KEC, I've worked with the Chamber, I've worked with some other folks. And I learned a lot. That actually got me the tech chops to then write some code for a music technology company in which we actually got a software patent. And the software patent is on, this is crazy, on if everyone recorded me speaking, I could take all your audio, stitch it together, and then I could hook it up with VR, and I can joystick through the audio. I got that patent. That's like mine. Now, here's the thing, though, and here's a little bit of IP law. Even though you have this patent, it doesn't mean you can actually use it right away. And it takes a lot of money to actually enforce it. And this is a nice segue to say, knowing the edges of law can help any stage of business. I don't care what industry you're in. I don't care what size you're in. Like, what's your size? Even if your idea, pre-revenue, post-revenue, scaling, like whatever, it can help because you understand the fringes. And when the founders understand the fringes, you know what risk you're willing to take and where the gray area is that you want to operate in. That's what's so powerful. That's why I'm dubbing this as legally organized. In order to do that, I have to give away this for free. Like, that has to happen, right? Like, I don't want you guys to be able to say, okay, I got to go pay $1,000 for a lawyer just to have a conversation. So, that's the premise of all this. Let me talk about what I actually do to pay the bills. Because now you guys are probably like, what? And let's launch into some actual legal techniques and concepts that you guys can walk away with some actual value. Does this sound good? Cool. So my job is on my business card, and all of you are more than welcome to have one, attorney and entrepreneur in residence. What that means is that I've built a business before, and I've helped enough people build their businesses where through the lens of a lawyer and through a lens of an entrepreneur, I can help de-risk what you're working on and help it grow. And I get a nice little title. EIRs, that concept comes from venture capital firms. When a company makes an investment into a portfolio of companies, they have EIRs to de-risk the teams. So that way they make this money, right? And all of a sudden the founders start going crazy, right? EIRs go in and step in and help de-risk what's going on with the business. So I'm like just trying to help businesses grow. So sometimes I'll have services, we'll do some contracts and it's delayed payment, sometimes no payment. Like, we're super flexible because you have to grow for anyone to win. So that's kind of what I do. Here's some real tangible value. So show of hands. Who has an LLC or a corporation? Okay, who is a solopreneur? Sole proprietorship. Awesome. Okay, of the sole proprietors, who's making money? Almost all the hands. Almost. Okay. Where are you making your money from? Online sales or physical? So online and not physical. Okay. And is it for goods that you're making by hand? Okay, makers. Yeah. Okay. Your risk profile is probably pretty low, right? You're probably making something that's not where someone's really depending on their livelihood or their health, right? So risk is pretty low. Here's a primer on legal entities. You have sole proprietor, which is yourself, and you have to still get your county license and your city license. A lot of people forget that. But if you're a sole prop, and look, the city and county are not going to come to your door, right, and be like, you have to do it. Like, you should, and you always want to be in their good graces, and it's worth the $60 a year. So just do it, right? So that's one. You want to register. If you're selling goods, which most of you are, make sure you have, of course, the Tennessee, the taxpayer identification number, so the TIN, right? That way you don't want to be not paying your sales tax. For anyone who doesn't know, sales tax is trust money, meaning it's not your money. That is money the customer is giving you that needs to go right to the state, and that is not your money to play with. And a lot of people get dangerously close with that. So just, there's that. Now you have a limited liability company that we've already talked about. We have a general partnership, and then we have corporations, okay? Some lawyers might actually recommend you set up an S-Corp. How many people have heard of that? S-Corp. Like, way to go. Wow, a lot of you guys. Okay, now traditionally the reason why, so under LLCs, you can't put yourself on salary, but you can just take out however much money you want. It's called a draw, okay? That's just written in the LLC statute. An S-Corp, you can put yourself on salary, and the way that the taxes work, traditionally, you can save on Medicare and on Social Security taxes for the difference between your salary and what you're really making. So in other words, if you're salaried at, let's say, I don't know, $50,000, but let's say the S-Corp made 100, you could potentially save 7.5% off the remaining 50 if you did an S-Corp. Those rules are changing now. A lot of people don't realize that, but there's tax codes that have been implemented this year in the Trump administration where that's potentially changing. So now the numbers are looking where that an LLC might actually just be easier and better for your money. So here's some random fact. Here's a lesson out of it. Don't particularly take someone's word on something, especially as a founder or an entrepreneur. Just do at least a quick Google search, right? Because you don't know how up-to-date these professionals are, including myself. Now, I'm very forthright, very honest. I mean, I'm going to tell you whether I'm updated on it or not. And if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you that, and I'll get back to you. But just when you're hiring professionals and they put themselves as like, I'm the person who knows everything that you need to do, like an accountant. Just don't take the word on it. Just really make sure it fits your test case because they're working for you. You're not working for them, they're working for you. Side note. So general partnership is actually the scariest thing that actually keeps me up at night for people. Who is in a general partnership? Oh, thank God. Oh, wait, you guys? Okay. No, that's okay. Because I actually know some background on these two, and they work really well with each other, so that's good. This is why it keeps me up. Because a sole proprietor, you're alone, and you get 100% of the money and the risk and of the decision making. A general partnership, it's 50-50 or whatever you guys decide, but if you don't talk about the issues, then if someone has a change of heart, that could be trouble. Scarier enough, if you guys don't see eye to eye on one issue and one person wants to sign an account, but that person's really bad with numbers, and in order to fulfill the account, they're actually going to lose. They're not going to make money. They're going to lose money. The other partner has to uphold that agreement in a general partnership. Because in a general partnership, the partners have full authority to bind each other and the GP to that opportunity and to that contract. Make sense? So you guys know each other for years. So like That makes sense. That's cool. And eventually, you'll become 2 members in an LLC. I can just predict it. But right now, like, just be careful. And the standard for becoming a GP, a general partnership, is really low. I think you guys are going to laugh. The standard's literally this: 2 parties or more working together to make money. I shit you not. That's the definition. Like, that's it. That is it. So just be warned, right? And then you get into issues of someone really thinks that they're in a partnership with you, but they're really not, right? So I actually had a young entrepreneur who had someone almost pretend like they were in a general partnership. And she was saying that if you use any of my ideas, which is a bunch of crap, you're going to give me 20% of your profit. If you don't respond to this email, deal's done. I shit you not. This was a real life case. Like, this actually happened. I talked to the entrepreneur, and the right thing to do was to respond back within the time frame saying, no, never ever. But if he didn't do that, he might have implicitly granted her the implied authority that they're general partners. Kind of crazy. Okay. Are we going to formation? Like, those are entity, that's really boring stuff. I think. But if anyone has questions about it. What now? A B Corp. Fantastic question. Okay, so a B Corp is called a benefits corporation. Pagatonia is an example of a B Corp. And it's essentially a C corporation with a how do you describe it? With a morality. In the articles of organization, you have to declare what your purpose is for your B Corp. B Corp's essentially not a nonprofit, because a nonprofit's a nonprofit, right? But this is a corporation that believes in longevity, sustainability. There are just certain mission and values they never want to stray away from. And a B Corp's an excellent way to do that because it's in the charter. There are 2 things when you make some kind of company. You have a charter and you have a bylaws. All you need to know is that a charter is really hard to change. That's why you have the purpose in the charter. So if you believe in something, let's say, Jonathan, I'm going to pick on you. Big Slate Media believes in providing genuine, sincere content. And if there is some kind of nonprofit angle to it where you want to give back, a B Corp could actually be really cool. Because even the branding around a B Corp, you can put it on your business card and you can get some traction on it, but only if you believe in it. Does that answer your question? Anyone else have questions about LLCs, all this boring stuff, the organization aspect of it? Go for it. Okay, so we've got a stained glass company, and how many partners are there? You and your husband? Okay, so how do you protect a possible falling out between a married couple and a business, let's say in stained glass? Low risk, you don't have to worry about someone suing you and maybe bankrupting the company, but let's say you're worried about active participation, for instance. Let's remove this from you, and actually, we have a number of clients that have their husband and wife teams. Like, that's a legit thing. So here's one thing that you want to know in an LLC or in any, if you want to do a general partnership without an LLC, at least have an operating agreement. That operating agreement is literally that. It's an agreement between the people that sign it on how to operate. Part of that, if you get a lawyer that has experience doing business law, we'll have provisions saying that if one wants to cash out, there are methods for how to get that partner out of the business and safe and sound. So that way no one's at risk and everyone's got their value. So typically what happens is that if it's done right, you're going to have cash contribution into the company. That partner is going to get their cash out. That's one. That's capital contribution. They'll get it back out. The other thing is that you both have to figure out what the business is valued at. And then once you figure out how much it's valued at, you have to figure out the repayment. Because essentially, let's say person B, let's say the husband's leaving and the wife wants to have the whole business. And so, well, let's flip it. Let's say the wife's leaving and the husband wants to have all the business. They have to figure out the true value so that now he has to figure out how to repay her for her 50%. That might be over 5 years, right? Pay it as a function of what money the business is making while he operates it. But that's actually called a buy-sell agreement. Again, in a good operating agreement, it'll have it. Ours do. Most reputable lawyers, their operating agreements are going to have that in there. But I have seen some shoddy work from folks that are claiming to be startup attorneys or business attorneys. They have no business doing that. And I've seen these bad agreements where it's silent on it. Does that answer it? So there are 7 folks that have an opinion and that are doing. Yes. Totally separate. You can have insurance as a sole prop if you show your business and county licenses. It's a little easier if you have an LLC. It all depends on your insurance carrier. Does that? No, if you're conducting physical operations that could potentially involve people getting hurt, and you could just reasonably believe someone could believe it's your fault, any one of your 7's fault, then general commercial liability insurance is a must. If that's the case, tomorrow's Monday, go get it. It's not worth the risk. Especially with that many cooks in the kitchen, definitely not the risk. If it was 2 people, you can manage it, and I would still recommend getting it. And look, it's actually more affordable than, how many people have looked into it? Okay, you've got it, right. Yeah, depending on if it's an average policy and depending on what your size of business is, I mean, it could be just as cheap as $100 a month. It's totally worth it. It could be more, just depends. Does that help? Awesome. Yeah, because each are up. If they're up, if you can reasonably assume they are acting on the behalf of the LLC within their duties and powers, it affects everybody. If it's on their personal time, nah. But here's the crazy thing, though. That person, that one of the 7 might be really shitty of a person or really in a tight spot, and they might claim that they were doing it for the business, in which insurance would help anyway. Questions on this stuff? I obviously feed off of this. Okay. Next area, I think as a maker, as anyone involved in this conference, you need to know entities and organization. I think you guys would agree, intellectual property. What are trademarks? What are copyrights? What about patents? What's all this crap? So let's just run through. Actually, let's get a show of hands. So who has their brand trademarked? Okay. Who does not know what a trademark gets you? Okay. Maybe there's some unsure folks. Don't know whether you raise their hand or not. So I just realized, let me just get into the material. So there are various protections on intellectual property. There's copyrights, trademarks, design patents, utility patents, and trade secrets. Now, trade secrets probably doesn't really apply to you guys, but imagine it was this. Coca-Cola, their formula. That's a trade secret. Reason why, it's not a patent. If they patented it, they would have to disclose what made it so special, and in 20 years, they would have to compete with everybody. That's the end effect. I'll tell you why that is. So let's go patents, since I just naturally went there first, and then we'll get to more applicable stuff. So you have design patents and utility patents. You can file for one. It's not always granted. The United States Trademark and Patent Office, USPTO, they're the ones that decide whether you get one or not. And this is a multi-year, thousands of dollars process. Sometimes it's worth it, right? Why? So you have to understand the general premise of why patent law exists. It's actually in the Constitution, and it's put there by the fathers to promote innovation. So that way, if someone invents something, you would imagine if you invented like this thing that kills cancer, right? You don't want to tell anyone if you want to make money off of it. So how do we address that situation? Well, patents can help you, right? So if they file for a patent, the trade is you tell the government and someone with a reasonable degree of skill and knowledge in that field how to do what you think you figured out, then if granted, the U.S. government's going to give you a 20-year monopoly. That means if anyone else sees your patent as filed and they want to copy it, let's say a big pharmaceutical company, they can't because you can sue their brains out. But only for 20 years. Does anyone know about the Pringles chip, how that was actually patented? And so when the patent fell, when it expired, all of a sudden, all these other companies started making like that shaped chip. Okay, does that kind of make sense to everyone? So the difference between a design patent and a utility patent, a utility, there has to be something uniquely not obvious about it, and it has to fall into certain categories. It essentially has to kind of do something or make something. Like that's the easiest way to think about it. A design patent could be you've redesigned a knife, and there's a different design on it because it's 3D printed and like the handle's 3D printed, and you've got some crazy design on it now, right? And so you'll only get 14 years of protection, and design patents are very easy to get. And they're also really easy to work around. So not many people get design patents, but they can be useful in some situations. First is, let's say you have this 3D handle, and it's a little bit weird how to apply it onto the blade. You figured out a process or a chemical that can better bond with the metal with 3D printed material. You might be able to get a utility patent, and that's 20 years protection. Let me get to some more practical stuff. Like I had to go through that because like you need to know that. But here's the stuff you really need to know. Copyright. Who has registered their copyright with the Library of Congress? Anyone done that? All right, few people. So if you draw something on this pad, you instantly have a copyright in it. Like if I draw on this, I've got a copyright in whatever I drew. It's a creation. Whenever you tangibly affix your creative whatever onto some tangible form, you have a copyright. What you don't have is the right to send a cease and desist letter to someone who's copying your work saying, hey, what you're doing is wrong. I mean, you can still send that anyway, but if you have a registered copyright, then all of a sudden you can say, I can reclaim up to $150,000 in damages because that's what the statute says I can. And so when a judge sees that, you're instantly going to get all the money you claim you're owed. So like Matthew, if anyone claims that, I'm going to copy whatever design you have registered, if someone copies it, he can send not a nice letter, but like saying, hey, you know what? Whatever money you've made, like $50,000, that's all mine because you copied my stuff. And I'm going to send you this letter. And if you don't act, I'm going to take you to court, and I'm going to get this pretty much in my favor. And that's the benefit in getting it registered. The problem is, as a creator, you create so many things. So how do you know which ones to like register and which ones not to, right? So you go to a lawyer, what's the first thing they're going to say? They're going to say, register everything. Spend the money, do it, everything. I have a client that essentially sells custom sounds for video work, right? So he has thousands of sounds. And he literally went to a patent lawyer that literally said, file everything. That's thousands of dollars. For what? That doesn't make any sense. So the practical advice that I gave him was, look, you have analytics because you're selling this online. Okay, let's track which works every month. You have to do this every month. Let's see which works are getting the most traction. Let's get real. If it's not getting traction, no one's going to copy it. Likely. If it's not getting traction and someone copied it, it'll be easier to prove they copied it. Right? Kind of makes sense, logically. So I told them, just look through your analytics and take like the top 5 and just register 5 works a month. Just your heavy hitters. Just do that. It's practical advice that makes sense from a business point of view, so you don't have to be out thousands of dollars for cash. There's copyright. A lot of people say I need to copyright my name. Wrong. You need to trademark your name. So who's familiar with a word mark and a design mark? Okay, this is really good. So when you file for a trademark, highly recommend, if you can't afford 2 trademarks for your brand, at least get this one. It's a word mark for your trademark. What that means is, let's say I have a company, let's say Legally Organized LLC, which actually I should probably do that at some point. Because I really think I want to do more of this stuff, because it's fun. So let's say I want to do that, and I want to get a trademark in it. So let's say if I can even get it. It's pretty descriptive. USPTO might say, it's not unique enough. We're not going to let you own those words together. They might say that. That's okay. Then it's up to me to prove that I'm creating a brand around it, and maybe I can get it granted. Let's say I don't want to spend a lot of money on it, so I'll put a word mark trademark application in. What that means, I'll file the letters in like ugly Times New Roman with no design, black and white. That's it. If I get that, I can design it however which way I want, but the words and the combination of the words are protected in my use in commerce, meaning that gets me the most protection. The ideal scenario, if I really figured out a design around this, I would get both. Does that make sense? Like, this is something I really want you guys to walk away understanding this completely. Anyone have any questions or needs clarification? Do not be bashful. I'll repeat it. What's her name? Judy? All right, Judy's got jewelry, okay? JJ. And so 8 Moons, her brand, her company's 8 Moons, okay? Yeah, so I would recommend, if you want, and if you think there's a risk of some people leveraging your brand, right? So you want to protect the value in your brand, then get a word mark for 8 Moons and submit that. And you're gonna, there are different services and different classifications. So you'll want to say jewelry, handmade jewelry, right? And that will increase your chances of that trademark going through. That way she can design however she wants with 8 Moons. The logo branding might change, but the underpinning name is protected. So if anyone else claims to say that's my brand, she can say, no, it's not. That's my brand. Stop what you're doing. If anyone goes down to Chattanooga from Knoxville, there is a billboard for a barbecue joint that looks exactly like Buddy's Barbecue. I don't know if anyone else has noticed this. Maybe I'm just crazy. But it totally looks like it if you're not. And so they're probably infringing on Buddy's Barbecue. They probably know about it. If you can prove that it's distinctive enough, there are 4 different levels. The best, most protectable level is fanciful, okay, which is like so imaginary. Like, imagine the most unrealistic combination of words together, and that could be fanciful. You have a higher burden to prove to the office that your application should be granted. How you get around it, you show that you've been using it in commerce, and you show that people are identifying it with your brand. Any product, that's your brand. If you can prove that link, that's how you can get around it and increase your chances. So that's important to say. The thesis of a trademark is to prove the identity of the goods. And it's all about the consumer. So the moment the consumer is confused about where the goods are from is the moment that trademark protection can help. That's a fantastic question. So when it comes to international trademarks, when you file, okay, so with patents, I know that when you file, and from personal experience, you have a certain window where then you have to file internationally to keep that date of priority. Trademarks might be similar, but at the ultimate answer is you have to go to individual country. So if, and I know a little bit of background on your thing, so if Germany's like the thing where you want to protect your interest, I highly recommend at least talking to a patent attorney about what it means to file overseas in Germany with the United States. I would highly recommend that. But weigh the cost of benefit, right? Because if they're charging you a lot, it's not worth it. Okay? Fantastic. So copyright law sucks. It can be good, but it can also be bad. I want to check time. We're about time. Wow. Okay. Real quick value. You have to show method of copying. They had access, and if it is actually copied. The next thing is that it's substantially similar. You don't want them to make that argument, and I don't think they can. It's a public thing, and you're going to have millions of photos or thousands of photos of the sun sphere. So basically showing access. And if you got a nasty letter, send a very polite, emotionless, and objective letter back. And, you know, that's kind of the unwritten thing, right? World and business is a game of personalities. And so to that point, we're out of time. If I could leave you with one more just takeaway, business is a game of personalities. It's about managing relationships, and it's about managing risk. If you can understand where all of it lies, you know, doesn't make sense when you have to go into the gray area, eyes wide open, where the value is. Thank you for your time, guys. I hope this helped.
See, but that was amazing. Give it up for him one more time. Can everybody find you here, legallyorganized.com? Is there any other place people can find you?
Actually, yeah, so you can find me at legallyorganized.com, and there's my contact info right in there. So just put in your email, and I'll just send a very polite, how did I do? Like, what can I change? And then you can also find me on Instagram. I'm pretty accessible that way. My handle is _HQ.